So I'm doing my book review on An Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. He's an environmentalist and politician. He served under Bill Clinton as vice president. At a young age, his mother introduced him to Earth's vulnerability and how human civilization had the power to really seriously harm the environment by reading him the book called Silent Springs. And then he had a teacher of his at Harvard that really opened his eyes to the problem of global warming. So he starts off his book showing a picture called The Earth's Rise. It was one of the first pictures to ever be taken in space of the Earth, and this really opened our eyes as a country and inspired the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and Earth Day. He then goes on to talk about Earth's atmosphere, how it's very thin and can easily be, the composition of it can easily be changed. And because as time has gone on and as we've industrialized the Earth, we've been releasing a lot of greenhouse gases into the Earth's atmosphere. So these would include like CO2, methane gas, and nitrous oxide. And because of this, Earth's atmosphere is getting warmer. In this book, he has a lot of examples of what he believes global warming is doing to the Earth, and one of those is melting the Earth's glaciers. And he talks about taking his daughter to Glacier National Park, and the guide telling him that one day Glacier National Park may not be there and they will all be melted, and that he might be some of the last people to ever see it the way it was when him and his daughter were there. The Himalayan glaciers provide 40% of Earth's water supply and are melting, and the average yearly temperatures continue to climb there because the higher CO2 levels mean higher temperatures. In the last 25 years, we have had some of the hottest years, 20 of the hottest years to be exact. In 2005, there was a large heat wave that killed 35,000 people in Europe, and these heat waves have led to drying out of soil, so a lot of farmland has been drying out, and wildfires. Al Gore goes on to then talk about how he believes that global warming is causing a lot of Earth's natural disasters, so causing bigger hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina that hit in August of 2005, which is around one of the hottest years that our world has seen. And then also he talks about how we never thought in the South Atlantic there could be a hurricane, and then shortly after, a hurricane hit Brazil. Because of the remnants of the hurricanes, the warm air and the warm water, the U.S. record broke its record for the most tornadoes in 2004. A lot of disastrous floods during this time hit Europe in 2005. Mumbai, India, because of all the moisture and the warm air, got over 37 inches of rain and experienced a lot of flooding. And then Africa, actually the opposite happened to them. They've been experiencing a lot of drought. They had the 6th largest lake, called Lake Chad, over 40 years ago, and since then it has shrunk to 1/20th of its original size. And this is a huge, for the locals that live around the border of this lake, this was a huge water resource to them, and now there is a lot of arguing about who owns what's left of the lake and who can plant near it, so it's causing a lot of devastation for them. Global warming has been affecting both the Arctic and the Antarctic, that play huge roles in cooling our entire planet. For the Arctic, the ice caps, which are 10 feet thick or less, and they're floating on water, So it's really easy for the warm weather to affect them, because if the water gets heated, then the ice caps start to melt. And the temperature in the Arctic is rising faster than any other place on Earth. And this has a lot of effect on the animals that live there. Polar bears are having to swim longer distances to get to land and find food, and are actually drowning because of this. In the Antarctic, it's affecting the ice shelves and actually causing them to break or melt, and this is causing a rise in our sea level. And if this continues to happen, one day we might have to create a whole new atlas or map of the Earth, because it will actually submerge areas of the Earth that are below sea level. So an example he gave in the book was Manhattan, where the memorial for the World Trade Centers are. If this continues, that whole memorial could one day be submerged. So here's what it looks like now, and that's the World Trade Center. And if those ice caps continue to melt, this is Manhattan submerged by water. It's also affecting our environmental imbalance. The global ocean conveyor belt, which is basically just the cycle of warm and cold water currents, it's affecting our coral reefs. When the water gets too warm, they release zoox, which is a red dye that's inside of them that gives them their natural color. And it also provides a lot of nutrients and what allows coral reefs to live, basically. And so that's why they're turning white and dying off, and causing explosions of algae, which is contaminating our water. It's also allowing a lot of disease-carrying species to take over different areas of the Earth, so like mosquitoes and bats and ticks and fleas. And even the warm climates are throwing off their seasons and threatening species, and actually interfering with the mating season. So when, for example, when birds come and they have their babies, they come the same time every year, but because of the climate change, a certain food source might not be available to them because it wasn't warm or cold enough for that food source to be available to them when they were ready to have their offspring. Another big issue is the Earth's population. There are so many of us now. There's greater demand for food and shelter and water and energy. So a lot of that is going into cutting down Earth's forests. So the Amazon rainforest is a big one, being cut down for firewood. And because of us cutting down these trees, a lot of carbon dioxide is being released. Actually, about 30% of the carbon dioxide released into the world has been from the Amazon rainforest. So it just goes to show you what happens locally can really affect us worldwide. Another example Al Gore gave was Haiti has lost over 98% of its forests from being cut down because they don't have any protection on their forest. But the Dominican Republic, which does protect its forests, has a greater abundance of trees. Both are located on the same island in the Caribbean. And it just goes to show how just having those laws and those rules can really protect our environment and make a huge difference. 30% of carbon dioxide is a lot to be released. Technology also has had a big effect. Yes, it improves our lives, but it's hurting the environment. Man has been irrigating and diverting giant rivers, but this has also been destroying bodies of water and making the earth more unnatural. Same with strip mining for copper. We're turning up the earth and destroying our natural habitats, and and a lot of this is happening in the U.S. We release the most greenhouse gas population at 30.3%. And since we are the most technology sound, it is our greatest responsibility to take care of the planet. And we can't mask the crisis we are facing. I think when this book was written, there was a lot of debate going back and forth about whether global warming really was the cause for all these issues. But luckily, a lot of countries are taking action, whether it be through the use of solar panels to provide a more naturally energy source, or geothermal power stations, fluorescent light bulbs that don't give up as much heat. That way we're conserving energy, or green roofs, allowing in cities, planting plants on top of roofs to get that air exchange so you can get that CO2 out of the Earth's atmosphere. Hybrid cars, or wind power, so windmills basically creating energy. There's also the Kyoto Protocol, which many nations have ratified. Basically, this targets, the basic target of this is to limit greenhouse gases. The only two nations that haven't ratified this are actually the United States and Australia. But really, I think Al Gore's main focus of this book is simple changes can make a difference. Now that we've dug ourselves in this hole, we kind of have to get ourselves out of it. And so limiting the amount of electricity we use, avoiding unnecessary plastics, riding our bikes when we can instead of driving, just the simple things can really make the big difference, and I think that is really what he wants to hit on here. And then as a country, making those bigger decisions to make bigger changes. I personally didn't have a huge understanding of global warming before reading this book. I do agree with what a lot of the authors said. I think he makes a lot of good points on how global warming really is making a huge effect, especially his examples of the Arctic and Antarctic. I think really I found it interesting to learn about, and how that we may someday have to redraw the Earth, because our maps of the Earth, because more of the Earth can be underwater. I really enjoyed reading this book. I think if I talked to people that were having issues understanding global warming, or the really big picture of it and how much it affects the Earth, I would suggest to read this book, because I think he does a good job with the pictures and the illustrations and stuff, and the different graphs. It really opens your eyes to how big of a deal this is. So I really enjoyed it.